Zegt Menochos, dat Mem Hey Amral, we're starting from Mem Dalid, Amid Beis, and the Mishnah. Okay, here we start. Okay, sagt the Mishnah, Haporim, V'ha'elim, V'ha'kvosim. The oxen, the cows, the rams, and the sheep, Shalom Asafim, of Kabmus, they're not marking one another. Meaning that when it comes to, even though the Torah says when you get to kvasim a certain amount, right? Let's say you don't have that amount. So you don't have the right amount of podim, you don't have the right amount of elim kvasim. So then you can bring even less. Rabbi Shimon adds, if he had a lot of cows, but he didn't have enough for nesachim, he didn't have enough money, should he diminish in the cows and bring nesachim to have less cows than the number that you're supposed to bring? Says the Mishnah. So that in order that you should have enough money for nesachim. So he says, yeah, even yavim par echad. Instead of shtei parim, let's say you bring one par unesachim. You shouldn't be makiv all of it without nesachim. Nesachim was a very chesed v'zah.
No, but why is it like you don't have to have the amount that you
Because it's like you say, it's a. The nesachim is the wine, yeah, that came with the carbon. But bring nesachim even with less cows. That's we're going to talk about separate. Now we're talking about the yayin nesachim or the ma'im nesachim. So he says when it comes to nesachim, it's like it's better to daven a little bit bikavana than a lot shloi bikavana. It's out there. Here nesachim is a chesh v'zach like we learned yesterday. Nesachim is azachos mit gizok shira. The Levim have gizok shira even in nesachim. So it's a very chesh thing. Zog the Yimada, honey parim ukvasim deheicha. Where? Which Yom Tov are you talking about? Which time are you talking about bringing the parim, the kvasim? If you're going to say the chag of Chag HaSukkos, that's impossible. Dort steht kamishpat, kimishpatim ksibahu. It says that you have to have exactly like it says the number. See, is ma'akif. You can't learn like in the Mishnah, it's not ma'akif. So we cannot be referring to the parim or the kvasim that's brought on Chag HaSukkos. No, we'll get to it soon. Okay. Only over here, we're talking about parim and kvasim. There's Chedesh, V'Hatzeres, of Reish Chedesh, and Shvuos. And which part of Shvuos are we talking about? The Chumash HaPikudim. We're talking about Mem Dalet Amid Beis, yeah. Yeah, so now we're, no. We're going on Mem Hey. Das gucken, yeah, so let's, yeah, you're right. Here, we're up there. Says the Gemara, I'm on the bottom. So he says, Hani parim ukvasim. We're talking. He said, if you can say Chag HaSukkos, it says befeidish kamishpat has to be exactly that number. So we said it's going on Reish Chedesh and Hatzeres, and which Hatzeres, the part that's mentioned in Bamidbar, the one that's mentioned in Bamidbar, and over there in Bamidbar is talking about the Musafim. Kudim is Bamidbar. So he's talking about those karbanis that they brought on Shvuos, which is mentioned in Bamidbar, where there only talks about the Musafim, nicht the Shtei Alachem. If Yom Tov Shvuos have been gebracht, they also brought the Shtei Alachem. That's in Vayikra. It's a different Atzeres. We're talking about the same Shvuos, but a different part of Shvuos. So he said over there by the Musafim, you bring Shnei Parim, Ayil Echad, Veshiva Kvasim. Okay, so you matter Elim. But if you're saying it's going on the one on the Musafim of Shvuos, it says that how many rams were there? Ayil Echad. In our Mishnah we said the Elim, it's plural, is English Ma'akiv. So Elim Deichel. What? We're one off.
No, it's like a motion when you want to say,
in order to say one is not Ma'akiv, you have to say this too. Says the Gemara, Elim, what are we talking about? Elim, it cannot be for the Musafim. Musafim is Ayil Echad. If you're going to say from the Musar Chedesh Shvuos, the Ayil there's only one Ayil, Nishkin Elim. It's not two. Either I said it's the Torah's Kahinim. Now you're going to go talk about. I told you that there's also talks about Shvuos, but of the Shtei Alachem in Chumash Vayikra, Nishim Pikudim. Says the Gemara. So if it's talking about the atzeres of and that come together with the shtei alechem, which is written in Chumash Vayikra, so how does the Mishnah say that Elam is not ma'akiv? Havaya ksibu. It says befedish a lashon of havaya. It says by the kabbanis atzibur. I'm sorry, by Vayikra it says Elam shnayim yihiyu Ela. Yihiyu means it's a muzaynaze. You can't change. It has to be exactly that number. You can't change it. So how could you say that this what the Mishnah is talking about? That the Elam is not me'akiv if it's going on a shvuis, and which part of shvuis on the shtei halechem? By the shtei halechem it says benegay to the Elam shnoyim yihiyu Ela. So you can't change it. So if you want to Elam, that says the Teiz. Really, we're talking about the behemoths that were brought with the shtei halechem. We said it's not ma'akiv, and the Mishnah says it is. The Mishnah says it's not ma'akiv, and the pasuk is mashma. It is ma'akiv. It says yihiyu. So this is how you have to learn. He says if you didn't bring the elim that comes with the shtei halechem, it won't hold back the ayil that you bring for in pikudim, the ayil that you bring as a musaf. It's two different groups. But he says one group, they're both, because they're connected to Atzeres. They both have to do with the Shvuis. It's all Kabbanis that have to be brought with Shvuis. So if you can bring the Elim of the Shtei Alechem, I would think you can't bring the Musaf till you bring the Elim, because Shtei Alechem was a vital part of that Atzeres.
You only have three or two.
You have three. You have two Elim for the that came with the shtei halechem, and you had one aisle that was brought with the musaf.
So I'm saying, if I only had two elim, I'm stuck.
No, he's not only talking about the two elim. If you didn't have all those kabbanis that were warranted for that were needed that came with the shtei halechem.
You needed that day. You needed three.
Musafim wasn't only aisle echad. Musafim was shiva kvasim. Yeah, he says if you didn't have. So if he says one group doesn't hold back the other group, that's all he's saying. If you weren't able to bring the ones from Atzeres, Shtei Halechem, it doesn't hold back the Musaf, or the Musaf doesn't hold back the Shtei Halechem. Okay, says the Gemara. The neither of them could hold back. Neither group could hold back the other group from being performed, from being sacrificed.
So
you can bring
one here and one there.
No, you don't split. It's two different groups. So what are you going to answer about the parim? You said the parim are not ma'akiv zeh. In the Mishnah, we said the parim are not ma'akiv. The afilah hadadi loy ma'akiv. We say even if you don't have all the parim, you're not talking about two groups now. By in parim itself, where you're supposed to bring shtei parim, you can bring even one. It's not ma'akiv. So he says that's what the Reish is talking about. Right, the Reish is talking about in the kfutze itself. Ein is nish me'akiv etzreita. One is not me'akiv the other one, and then when it comes to the elim, the hacha, hu the loy me'akvi. But inu me'akvi, he says it's two. The Mishnah is talking about different cases. The first case is talking about in one group, parim is one is me'akiv is not me'akiv the other, but. In the elim, you say, in the group, if it's in the group, one is ma'akiv, shnei parim, shiva kvasim. So he says over here, but when it comes to the case of elim, you're talking about a whole different thing. What does it mean it's not ma'akiv? Ein kvutza, the musafin is nish ma'akiv. The elim that comes with the shtei halechem, or the elim of the shtei halechem is not ma'akiv the musafin. It's two different cases. Does it make sense? I mean, Tana Mili Katani. The Mishnah can have one, the Reish can have one case, and the Sefer could be talking about another case. No big deals. Okay. Right. That's very good. That's what the Gemara usually says. Yeah. Kosavi Yecheskel. It's written in Yecheskel like this. Par ben baka tomim. V'sheishes kvasim v'ayil tmimim yiyu. So it says the Gemara, hey, Yecheskel is contradicting what the Torah says. The Torah says beferish, you need two parim, right? It says, Yeah, it says two parim. If you look, it says in the Torah, Here it says par echad. What is one par coming to tell us? Since by the Musaf Rosh Chodesh in the Torah it says you bring two parim. If you didn't find two, maybe you bring still one. That's why we have the pasuk in Yecheskel par to tell you if you don't have two, you should bring one. Pshat. Yeah, pshat. Yeah, not a new din. It's not changing the din of the Torah. It's just learning pshat in the Torah. When the pasuk says sheisha or sheisha's kvasim, in fact, it says shiva kvasim. That's what it says. That's what you bring by the Musaf Rosh Chodesh. After the Gemara, the Fisher Kasba Torah by Rosh Chodesh Shiva, it says shiva kvasim. In the Torah state shiva kvasim. Torah it says shiva kvasim. Minayim shiva leimatzah shiva yavi shisha. Tamad leima shisha. Umenayim shiva leimatzah shisha yavi chamisha. Chamish yavi abba yavi shloisha. Or shloish yavi shnayim. Afilu echad. Tamad leima kavasim kasher tasig yodei. So the Gemara says, look, it says shisha in Yecheskel. In the Torah, it says by the Musaf you have to bring Shiva. What's this? So the Gemara is come to tell you if you only had Shisha instead of Shiva, you bring this Shisha. How do you know if you had only 5 and not 6, or 4 and not 5, or 3 and not 4, till 1, 2 and not, or just 1? So he says by Kvasim Kasher Tasik Liyadi. Whatever your hands could afford, that's what you bring. In the Torah, that's the must. Yeah. Look, Kvasim Kasher Tasik Yodei. That's what it says. That's what it says in Yecheskel. Yeah, but a 1. It has to be minimum 1.
So everybody will be cheap about it.
Oh, well, you're jumping. So if you could even bring 1, what do I need a limud Shisha to tell you if it's not 7, 6? What do you mean it's not 7? What are you saying Shisha 6? If it's not 7, 1. What do you have to go? If you can bring 1, what are you going Shisha? It says Shisha. If you don't have Shiva, you bring Shisha. But if you don't have Shisha, you can bring 5, you can bring 4, you can bring 3, 2, 1. What's the to me with Shisha? No, it means the count the Hemshel Haduri Madina. It says, let's say you have 6. Then it's Yiyu. You have to bring the 6. You can't say you can't avoid it. If you can afford 6, there's no getting out of it. If you can afford 5, you're not going to say, I'll bring 1. No, you got to bring all of them. Whatever you have. Yeah, that's it. Menayim Shemakim says, how do we know that? It says in the Pasuk, Yiyu. It says in the Pasuk, Tmimim Yiyu. Yiyu tells us, hey, whatever you got, it's got to be, that's the number you have to bring. There's no Aris Drains. The minimum is 1 if that's all you can afford. But if you have 5, you're not bringing 1. You don't bring 4 either. You can bring the 5. It says in Yecheskel, so says Hashem Elokim, in the first day of Chodesh Nisan, Be'ech LaChodesh, Tikach Pa Ben Baka, Tomim Echatos, V'chiteis Es HaMikdash. It says, bring Pa Ben Baka, and it should purify and be mechaper on the Beis HaMikdash, on the Mikdash. So from the Lashon Hakas Chiteis is mashma, it's coming as a korban chatas, that the par is coming as a korban chatas. A korban chatas is a so'ir, nishkim par. A par is a oila, par the oila, the so'ir chatas.
So you can't waste the meat, right?
So yeah, but the problem is you called it a chatas. It's oila hi fragimara. A par is always a oila. The so'ir is a chatas. So how could the Cheskel write that? Maybe can afford a bar. It's too expensive. No, it doesn't work that way. So Rabbi Yechon said this pasha Eliyahu will in the future dashen it. So all the Mepharshim is, why do we need Eliyahu to dashen it? Yecheskel was the Navi here. In Lasid Lave, but Yecheskel's talking the Piddush. He's the one that wrote it. Why is it saying Eliyahu Navi? So state as Eliyahu Hanavi is going to be the first one to be Mavasa about Mashiach. He's going to be the one before. He's going to get up before Yecheskel, before Tchiz HaMesim. So that's why he's going to be the right one. It's like there was a Rosh Hashiva. Eines gekommen zu der Rosh Hashiva und gesagt, ich bin Eliyahu Hanavi. Oh, du bist Eliyahu. Ich suche mit der größeren Lichten. Ich will dir fragen, der Scheich mal gehad. A Kav, Peres, Bestei Abes, it says Teiko. What's the answer? He's a weggelaufen. It's nicht kein Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay, so Ravashi Yoma. Ravashi says, Shemiluyim, Ravashi wants to answer. He says, you're right. Till Eliyahu will answer, but I think I have an answer. Why Yecheskel said that. Just like in the days of Moshe, when it came to the Chanukas of the Mishkan, so they had the Yimei HaMiluyim, and they were makiv a par for Chatas. The par was for Chatas. That's what they were makiv B'Reish Chodesh Nisan. So B'Mei Ezer, the days of Yecheskel, he said that they should be makiv a par as a Chatas, as the Chanukas Habayis, Chanukas HaMishkan. Tanya Nami Hoch, we learned in the Braisa very similarly. Rabbi Yehuda Eimah Pashas Eliyahu no Asi L'Dosha. Rabbi Yehuda said, this Pasha that it says that par will be brought as a Chatas, even though normally Sar is a Chatas, Rabbi Yehuda said, Eliyahu will dashn it. Amalei Rabbi Yosef said, no, I can answer it. Miluyim hikim b'mei Ezra, kedei shehikrivu b'mei Moshe. Just like Havashi answered, he said, that it's Miluyim, and that's why the par was brought as a Chatas. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda says, whoa, what an answer. Now you can calm down. You calm me down, and now you can be calm. Okay. Because if he's not calm, Rabbi Yossi is all edgy. Okay. It says in Yecheskel, Kol nevelo treif min ha'ayil, u'min ha'behema lo yechla kahanim. It says, any nevelo or treif of a bird or of a behema, kahanim should not eat. For you money, kahanim u'da lo yechlu, are you so achli? What, Megan Hassan and nevelos and treifis? It says only kahanim are not, but are you so good?
Because they're holy.
Amar Rabbi Yechon Pasha zu Eliyahu asa l'dasha. Again, Rabbi Yechon said, this Pasha Eliyahu, leave it for Eliyahu. So Rabbi Naaman, no, I have an answer. Kahanim itzachale. I had to tell you about Kahanim because I thought the Kahanim could eat treifis. Nevelos and treifis.
Saying the same expression.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yehuda said
No, but Rabbi Yechon was the first one that said this expression before that. It says the Gemara. I would have thought to say that the Kahanim themselves are allowed to eat nevelos and treifis. Why? Since you're in the oif, only if it was brought as oif, achatas oif, they were allowed to do malika on shchita. Then malika makes it into a nevelo treifa. First, you're not cutting the kanavashi. You're doing it from the back. You're not doing it with a sakin. So it's mamish nevelo treifa. So I said, oh, tishtei nami nevelo treifa b'chal. So that's all we'll say. Kahanim could eat in nevelo treifa. Kamash one, no.
So what did they have to do malika then?
Only by Elis Chatas. That was the exception. Sagt you have geen tasa b'shivach b'chaydesh me'i sheyu mipesi v'chipatam saboyes. It says so you should do in the 7th of the month. Me'i sheyu means when somebody mipesi, somebody who is a shoyek, and it will be mechaper alabayis. So let's understand what's going on here. Shiva, the Shiva that says in the pasuk, he says Amar Rabbi Yochanan Elo Shiva Shvatim Shechatum. It's going on 7 Shvatim that sinned because of the Hayra of Mutis, a mistake that the Sanhedrin made. They said that the Chaylev, which is Issa, the Kafetz, you'll not eat, they said. So 7 Shvatim made it. So the electoral vote, we just said Shiva. So be Shiva, what's the Shiva going on? On the Shiva Shvatim. So he's saying even the... Oh, this seems like Yecheskel also. It says Yecheskel. It's all Yecheskel here. Oh, it doesn't. No, but the thing is, the electoral vote, the electoral majority was 7. But v'afal pi she'ein ruba shakol, even though they were the minority in people, less in people, but electoral they were more. So nevertheless, it was mechaper. Chodesh, they had to bring a pahalam dava. Chodesh. And not every yachid had to bring it. It was a pahalam dava that they brought. Chodesh, what does this mean? Chodesh, they brought Shiva. Chodesh, what does it mean? It sounds like it's in a month. No, he says, Im chitshu v'amru chelamot that mutter. If the Sanhedrin betos were mechadish, that chelav is mutter. Umeishoige umipasi, meaning that it was a shoige. Melamed she'ein chayav mchatazu el al helam dava. Only like a pesi. A pesi is a narish mensch. He doesn't have das. So here also was a helam dava. They didn't know. Im shigas ma'isa, that's the ish shoigat. So then the halacha is that even though the electoral, since the electoral vote is, not vote, the electoral people shvatim of the shvatim, the electorals of the shvatim were more in Shvatim, but in people they were less. And nevertheless, the halacha is that you bring a power, Helam Dov Shal Tzibor. Okay, Amar Yehuda Amar Rab. Zachor Oisei Ha'ish Latoiv. Remember this person only for the good. Who is this person? Chanina ben Chizkiya Shemai. Chanina ben Chizkiya. Why? She limali who? If not for Chanina ben Chizkiya, Nigna Sefi Cheskel. We would have to put it in Shemus. Because his Seisa also Shleik in the Torah. So your Dvarov, the words of the Cheskel is Seisa in the Torah. It looked like it's Mamish to Seisa all the words of Torah. No, so we had already a couple answers. That's Nishkin Stira. We already answered a couple. So Ma also, what did Chanina ben Chizkiya do so special? He gathered together 300 barrels of oil to keep the lights on, that he should learn Yom V'Layla, to figure it out. And he sat in the attic until he figured out as all the stiras as Nishkin Stira. And that's how we saved that's why we can now learn Sefer Yecheskel. It doesn't say how long, 27, I'm going to tell you in a second. It doesn't say. Yeah.
And what kind of thing did he say? Which things that he was
you remember we had before stiras. It says that the par was Chatlas. It's normally a Ayla. So they answered, but he answered a lot more stiras. He went through the whole Yecheskel. Okay. Rab Shimon hat gesagt, if they had a lot of parim, but they didn't have nesachim, so Rab Shimon said, listen, nesachim is important. Bring one par, a b, it should come with nesachim. Learn as daven a bisschen mit kavana, besser wie daven a ganze loy kavana. Rab Shimon said, that's what we just said. It says in Yecheskel, ve'efa lepar, ve'efa le'ayel, yasem mincha, v'lakvasim kasher tasik yadu v'shemen hin le'efa. Rab Shimon had said, I think he says this is Rab Shimon by Yechai. Anyway, Rab Shimon chimidas leparim ve'elam achasi. The efa, there was shloisha soinim lapar, ushneya soinim la'ayel. It's a different yisan, a different shiurim. What is one share for all of them? Ella sagt the Yamada. What does it mean? Eifa. He says whatever the fitting measurement is for that behemoth, for that carbon. Parim merubim leihayalahem nesachim. If he had a lot of parim, but he didn't have now enough money to buy nesachim, yaviyu parachot nesachav. He should bring one par and nesachim. But don't be making all the behemoths without nesachim. But if he had enough money to buy Eilim Merubim, there was enough. He had money for a lot of Eilim, but he didn't have enough for a mincha. So he says, Yaviyu ayel echad, bring one ayel, ve'ifasei, and the mincha with it, ve'lo yikru, right, ve'lo yikru b'lo yefes, and don't be makiv without a mincha. Sagt the Mishnah, hapa v'a'ilim akvasim, the ox, the ram, and the sheep, v'asoyer of the korban chatas, ein ma'akvanas alechem v'lo yalech ma'akvam. That which was brought with the shtei alechem. So if you don't bring the par ve'elim akvasim, it's not ma'akev. The lechem has nothing to do with it, and the lechem is not going to be ma'akev the karbanis. Meaning that if you are not able to bring the oil chatas, so you bring the shtei alechem without them. And if you weren't able to bring the shtei alechem, then you bring the karbanis without them. Here. What? What? This is the surah of a chatos. Halechem me'akiv eshnei hakvos shel shlomim. Here is the only place where it's a shalmei tzibah. Usually it's a shalmei yochid. Here is one of the exceptions, if not the only one of shlomim, which is for tzibur. So he says, Halechem is ma'akiv the kvasim of a shlomim. Aber ve'ein hakvasim shel shlomim ma'akiv halechem. But the kvasim of the shlomim is not ma'akiv the lechem. Divir Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says, what's the ikar? the lechem. The lechem, if you don't bring the lechem, you don't bring the kvasim. But if you don't bring the kvasim, you still bring the lechem. The lechem is the main. Amar Rab Shimon ben Anis. Rab Shimon ben Anis says, Loi, I say just the opposite. Ki ella ha-kvasim is the ikeh. The kvasim is ma'akvin alechem. Alechem ain't ma'akvin is ha-kvasim. He said, from mamish verkehrt.
If you don't have lechem, you bring the kvasim.
You bring the kvasim anyway. He says the kvasim is the main thing. If you don't have kvasim, you don't bring the shtei alechem, according to Shimon ben Anis. Shekei matzinos. What's his reason? Because this is what we found. When the Yidden were in the midbar for 40 years, they were makif kvasim because they couldn't bring the oima and the shtei alechem, because the oima and the shtei alechem was only from the Tvua of Eretz Yisrael. They were in the midbar, and nevertheless they brought kabbanis. Okay, so but you see, the lechem is not the ikar, and they were able to bring the behemoths. Afkan yikvu kvasim lechem. So to here you bring kvasim without the lechem. So the kvasim is the ikar. Omer Rab Shimon. Here Rab Shimon is Rab Shimon bar Yochai, and not Rab Shimon ben Anas. I made a mistake over here. It says it's Rab Shimon bar Yochai and not Rab Shimon ben Anas. Omer Rab Shimon halachi dibi ben Anas. Aval ein hatam kidvarav. The reason that he gives it's not like him. Why? Everything that's mentioned in the Chumash HaBikudim, Korban Midbar, was sacrificed in the Midbar. Anything that's all those kabbanis that are mentioned by Yikra, those kabbanis were not sacrificed in the Midbar. They were makiv the both. If you're saying that they weren't makiv whatsoever in the midbar, the shtei alechem, there was no kabbanis that was brought with the shtei alechem. So why did I say yikavu kvas lechem? What does that mean? He says, why should I be makiv the kvasim without the lechem? Because the kvasim could be matter through its zrika without the lechem, because there's something to be matter the behemoths. When you spray the blood and you burn the imunim, it's matter the rest of the meat of the behemoth. Well, loy alechem, loy kvasim, but the lechem cannot be. There's nothing to be matter the lechem. Lechem has nothing. It's not on the mizbeach. There's nothing from the lechem that goes on the mizbeach. From the kvasim, you have side the blood and side the imunim. Oh, but the lechem had garnished. Shein loy mi yatiranu. There's nothing for it to be matter. Huh? No, you weren't makiv the shtei alechem, nothing. It went all to the kahanim. Tony Abarim, we learned in the Braisa. The chayiv of the shtei alechem chag Shavuos, it says v'hikraftem al halechem. So it's mashma. It's a chayiv to bring the kabbanis together with the shtei alechem. And then he continues shivas kvasim tmimim afal pishein lechem. So he says, if the Torah would have written v'hikraftem shivas kvasim tmimim, and the last words would have been al halechem, then you say, yeah, you can't bring the lechem without the kvas. It's not separate; it has to be together. But then it would be you have to be makit the kabbanis only if you bring the lechem. But here it says it doesn't say lechem first. It doesn't say lechem last. It says v'hikraftem al halechem, and then it says shivas kvasim tmimim. So it's mashma. It goes on its own. It's b'fnei atzma. Oh, we'll get to it. But b'pel mamish, it says shivas kvasim tmimim ifter. So it's mashma. It's not part of it. So what does it mean? So what does halalachem mean if it's not together? Or the other kabbanis that come with the shtei lechem koydem shenischayv halechem. You cannot be mechayiv to bring the kabbanis of the lechem before the chiyuv of lechem came around. I mean, kolzman they were in the midbar, they weren't mechayiv in the shtei lechem. So also the kabbanis balachayim they weren't mechayiv. But once they entered Eretz Yisrael and they became mechayiv in the shtei lechem, is given a chiyuv to bring the shnei kvasim. They didn't have to. No, there was no chiyuv. Okay, Dibur Rab Tafin. Those are the words of Tafin. Hein kvasim amurim kan in Chumash Vayikra. Hein kvasim amurim in Chumash HaPikudim are the same kvasim. He says. No, I disagree with him. It's this. He says the same ones that were brought in the Kabbanis Musaf of the that were brought, that's mentioned in Sefer HaMidbar, are the same Korban Musaf that's brought by Chag HaShavuos, and the same. It's the same ones. So it says Yemara Hamarta Kishato Magi Eitzu Parim Ha'ilim Einan Hein. You said when it comes to the Parim Ha'ilim, it's not the same. Rabbi Tafin said what's mentioned in Chumash Bamidbar and what's mentioned and in Chumash Vayikra are two separate things. First of all, in Vayikra it says Par Echad and Shnei Eilim, and in Chumash Bamidbar it's the reverse, not Par Echad, Shnei Parim v'Ayil Echad. So it's the exact opposite. So he says,
The same yontif.
yeah. You have to say the one in Bamidbar is brought on its own as a Korban Musaf, and the one that's mentioned by Yikra was brought with the Lachem. Nimsa Mashom. I just said
Which goes on with
the Par Echad Ushnei Eilim is in Chumash Vayikra. That's brought with the Shtei Lachem. And in Bamidbar, Shnei Parim v'Ayilachad. Okay, Nimtze Masham v'Chumash HaBekodem, Korban Bamidbar. Masham v'Teres Kayanim, Loi Korban Bamidbar. And what's mentioned in Teres Kayanim in Chumash Vayikra was taka not sacrificed in the Midbar. Maybe only the Parim and Eilim were different, but Hakvasim Inu Ninu. But when it came to the Kvasim, they were the same number, Shiva. So maybe it's the exact, maybe it is the same, the one from Pikudim and the one from Vayikra. Says you want to know, if by the Parim Ve'ilim there were different numbers, so you could say the Shiva Kvasim, they were separate, they were different Karbanis in Bamidbar than the one that was in Vayikra, than the Shiva Kvasim. Separate. One had to only do with the Musaf, and one was for the Shtei Alachem. So what if they had different numbers? Maybe it's the same one, and maybe this is what the pasuk is saying. If you want, you can bring one par, or the Ibai, if you want, you can do Shnei Parim. Maybe that's what the pshat is, and it's not two separate sets of kabanis. Says since there's a different order, if you look in the order, it says first in Chumash Vayikra it says first the Shepsin, Kvasim, then the Par, and then the Eilim. In Bamidbar it says Parim first versus Vayikra Kvasim first. The second one was Ayil in Vayikra, and the second one in Bamidbar was Par. So it's a whole different seder. So we know it's different. Halach me'akiv v'sakvasim says the lechem is ma'akiv the kvasim, but the kvasim are not ma'akiv the lechem. My time to Rabbi Akiva. Why does Rabbi Akiva say the ik is the lechem? Gomar, he learns with Gzeir Shava. Yiyu, it says b'negei to v'heinav hakoyin al shnei kvasim kodesh yiyu. And it says tiyena. It says by the mincha lechem. It says by the lechem tiyena. Malahalam lechem, just like in the pasuk, tiyano means lechem. Avkan here also means lechem, so the lechem is the ikra. Ubenanes goma yiyu. It says he learns from yiyu different. The first Rabbi Taf and Rabbi Akiva learned yiyu from tiyana. Rabbi Benanes is learning out yiyu from yiyu that's written by Eil Hashem. Malahalam kvasim, just like the yiyu. It's connected to kvasim. Avkan, the yiyu is l'kvasim. That the kvasim is the ikar, not the shtei alachim. Ubenanis nami leila mitiyana. Why doesn't he learn like Rabbi Akiva from tiyana? So he says, as malahalam lechem avkan lechem that ikar is lechem. And donin yiyu me yiyu. You make a gzeir shava from the same exact word. Abavein donin yiyu me tiyana. Tiyana it's a whole different word. Who cares if it's different? The Shadish is the same. Where do we see that? I'll tell you the way Rabbi Yishmael. It says V'shava koyin, uba koyin. Zehu shiva, zehu bia. We said just like the first week, it says V'shava koyin, the koyin shall return if the tziras got back bigger. So we say, and the second week, it says the word uba koyin, and we learn uba from the shav, even though they're two different words. So Maduch, if it's two different words, you make Gzeira Shava. How much more so Tiyu Yiyu from Tiyana, which is the same Shadish. So he answered back, no, when do we make Gzeira Shava even if the words are not similar? That's only if you don't have a Gzeira Shava with the exact same words. But where you have a Gzeira Shava with the exact same words, like Yiyu, you learn out from the one that's similar. Rabbi Akiva, Nami Leil Yiyu Yiyu Tak. Rabbi Akiva, why didn't you learn out Yiyu Yiyu? So he says, Don in Dava Matan Lakayim, Dava Shamatan Lakayim, Lafukir Hani, Doilos. He says the Yiyu and Tiyanu are talking about a matana that's given to the kohen. The Yiyu is talking about an oila where it's not has nothing to do with the kohen. The whole thing goes to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Everybody saying another answer is Bikra Gufi Kamiflagei. In the pasuk itself, they're arguing Kodesh Yiyu La Hashem La Kohen. Rabbi Akiva Saba, when it says Kodesh Yiyu La Hashem La Kohen, what's something that goes all to the kohen? It goes on the bread. Does it say just la kohen? It says to both Hashem and the kohen. That's what's written. So you have to find a case where it goes side to Hashem and side to the kohen. They moved him from the kvasim. Go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the meat goes to the Yekanim. Rabbi Akiva says, no, you're reading it wrong. Miksiv, Kodesh La Hashem, Vila Kohen. Does it say it goes to Hashem and to the Kohen? We're not talking about something that goes to Hashem and to the Kohen. State La Hashem La Kohen. You're going to ask me, what does it mean? La Hashem and then La Kohen, and not that it goes to both. Kedav Huna, he says, Damar Avhuna, Benegeya to Rechush from a ger that was stolen, and the guy lied, right? And then the ger died. So who do you pay back? So it says, yeah, and he had no yarshim. So then the ger died. So what do you do? So it says, Hashem. First, we give it to Hashem, and then the whole thing goes to the kohen. So you see, the whole thing goes to the kohen. I got it.